There will be a slight change in the procedure today because of some matters that have to be taken into account. This is a matter not only for the candidates, but it's also for the general work of the organization as a whole. The problem is this. We have two programs going, major programs, commitments going, pertaining to the national campaign. One is composed of the separate campaigns, which we have. The other is a unified national campaign, which is based on the national program of our entire party organization. And that means that we're dealing with NAWAPA, because the only way that we can run a successful campaign of the type we're trying to run with the 4-6 candidate business is we have to unify this thing in effect. It cannot be simply the effect of 4 or 6 different campaigns. There has to be a unified conception of the campaign. That provision is built into the system. And we're now getting at the point with this NAWAPA program at which NAWAPA, as a key part of the national campaign from the top down, has to operate. Otherwise, we don't have much of a campaign. As long as we are defined by 6 different candidacies, we do not have true national impact. All we have to do, however, is to take one factor of the campaign from the top down and integrate all the campaigns underneath that one campaign. Now, what's happened is this process of building these campaigns started a couple of years ago, essentially. It started when we started the NAWAPA program. Now the thing has reached the point that NAWAPA is ready to go on paper with all the work and intentions we have. Also, remember, NAWAPA is implemented through what? It's through the question of water as such. Because this program, based on this water system, integrates the entire campaign. How? Because the NAWAPA is the only program we have, or which is available to us, which enables us to have a true national campaign with a national impact, which is what a national campaign means. Putting people together, one after the other, does not make a national campaign. For example, 100 candidates for federal office would not mean a unified campaign, as you can see from the way campaigns run nowadays. We, however, do have implicitly a unified national campaign, which nobody else in this country has right now. NAWAPA typifies that campaign. There are 2 elements onto it in terms of our platform. One is NAWAPA as such, because that's the project that pulls us all together. It integrates the entire nation. Now, if you think about it, there's not a single part of the United States that is not integrated by the implementation of NAWAPA. Not a single one. Every part of the nation has some role to play, a crucial one, which is not only crucial for the national project, it's crucial for each of the nations and territories within the nation of those states. So that by what we need to do at this point, because we're coming to a point of money. We don't have enough money for the campaigns, the 6. We don't have enough money for NAWAPA. However, if we put them two together in the right way, we have enough money. Now, what we're talking about, what's being talked about on the NAWAPA side, is $100,000 just to get this report out. Now, from the standpoint of individual campaigns, of our campaigns, $100,000 is a great sum of money. And even if you try to divide it among 6 candidates, it's still a horrendous side of money for us right now. How do we overcome that little difficulty? Well, if you're going out to the nation and not talking just about what you're going to do in a certain part of the nation, a certain district, a congressional district, but if you're talking about saving the people of the United States from destruction and destitution, and the only option on the table for that, I think that makes a little stronger program. It does not diminish the individual campaigns, it strengthens them. The campaign that represents the national interest is the campaign that best suits the interests of the people of every state. And so we're going to proceed on that basis. Now the idea is we've got to change a lot of our program in terms of the educational program, appeals and pitches and so forth. We have to emphasize it this way. Now, as you know, by now, you're insiders, you know this. Well, Michael has the package virtually completed for presentation. And he now needs $100,000 just to produce the report which is going to make that part of the campaign work. Could you raise $100,000 from 6 campaigns? No. Could you raise it from a national campaign to save the nation, to rebuild the economy of the nation, based on the proposed national constitutional policy which we proposed? We can do it. So rather than trying to run from underneath and try to get pushed upward like people in gravestones, you know, trying to push up the gravestone to tell you they're still alive, which is sometimes I know you feel like that on a bad day or a bad week. Right? But rather than that, we're going to go from the top down. We are going to be the political force that has the only campaign, the only policy that could possibly rescue this destitute nation of ours. And that change has to be made. It has to be made effectively, not with an also ran, but really has to come across. Without the NAWAPA program, as we've defined it, and no other program is now out there in the United States for the United States as a whole. None. The only program which is ready to go, that is from the start of initiating it as a policy, of any part of this nation, is NAWAPA. The auto industry was supposed to be that, and they collapsed that. It's gone. You go every part of the states of the United States where there used to be machine tool design capability, it's gone. Everything that would rescue the United States has been almost destroyed. But if we take NAWAPA and we mobilize people around it, why? Because it's the only thing we have on the table, the only thing available to the people of the United States now, which could actually be the means for launching a recovery, an economic recovery of the United States, is NAWAPA. There are 2 aspects of this. First of all, NAWAPA by itself is extremely important. It's crucial all unto itself. But that's not the limit of it. It's also the basis for hooking together things possibly with Russia, other countries abroad. International programs, the space program, all of these kinds of things come together under one roof. You want to rebuild the space program, restart NAWAPA. It builds the foundation for doing that. You want any kinds of needs, medical needs, all these needs, start NAWAPA. Because the way the economy runs is not the way the idiot thinks the economy runs. They think you've got a little store, you know, and you may have a little dog hidden under the big dog. Right? But that isn't the way economies work. Economies work on the basis of the foundation of the physical development of the economy. This means not only physical in the sense of tools and so forth, it means physical in terms of what you're thinking about, how you're going to change things. You know? And we've got to now think in those terms. So what I'm pushing right now, we had a meeting, as you can imagine, this noontime. And this came up among the several things we discussed, which were paramount. And this was the most paramount. We have a program now, the NAWAPA program, with an extended NAWAPA program because we've been at this for a long time. We are now, right now, the experts on a NAWAPA program. And for us, because of our capability, because of our basement operations and so forth, it's also everything else. It's space, it's everything. Which means we're going to build a tool-making foundation for the programs which are necessary. We're going to take NAWAPA as an immediately feasible designed program. In other words, we have a NAWAPA as a design program. There's some improvements that will be made from the original design, but we've gone through it, we've got it, it's ready to go in our minds. We need to get it going. We also need to think about the American people. What are they being given as an option for this vacation, this operation? What are they being given? Nothing. Nothing is there for them. They're being promised what? Nothing. They're being promised less. Or you won't be bothered by the encumbrance of wealth. You won't be overfed. You won't get too much medical care anymore. That sort of thing. So it's building on that basis that is the way it's got to work. And we have the ability. We can now, with this program and putting our muscle behind it, and this is where our muscle becomes muscle. For a lot of things, our muscles are not important. For some things, they are. And this is one thing it's for. We have the program. We can start right now with what we've proposed, what our national policy is. You know? And we can launch immediately a program which will do what has to be done for this nation and other nations. And we're the only one, the only organization on the planet right now which is capable of doing it. And that's what our market policy is. No one else except us has the organized concept of what needs to be done to unleash a general expansion of the U.S. economy and of the world economy. We're the only ones. We have fine people in Asia who will cooperate with us now. We have people in Europe who are being reduced to wretched conditions. They will come to us too. We have to start it. And we have to raise the flag. So don't continue to think in terms so much from the starting point of the national campaigns, that is the regional congressional campaigns. Don't imagine that building the campaigns in local areas builds the big campaign. You can think about the $100,000 cost for just one report on NAWAPA. You realize that you can't get started. And it's only when a program like NAWAPA which can start the recovery. You can't start a recovery piece by piece. You have to start it from the top with a single unifying program which moves everything else. Now we can do that. But what we have to do is we have to produce, one, a general statement behind all programs which identify what the solution is, the practical solution for the crisis, the economic crisis of the United States today. The only program which is on the basis for presentation and inaction is NAWAPA. There is no other program in operation, in place to be developed, which can do that job except NAWAPA. NAWAPA then opens up the possibilities for all kinds of things, including both the United States and in relationship to other countries. That's where we stand. So it's a change in emphasis, but it's actually solving a problem which is coming up at us fast. If we were going to limit ourselves to being 6 candidacies, congressional candidacies, we'd be losers. But when we put ourselves together and present the National Recovery Program as something we understand, we know how to direct, and we have the design to implement it, an updated version of NAWAPA to be implemented. And for the next 30 years, or maybe less, we will complete this project in NAWAPA. In the process, we will change the world as a whole by doing it. Now we take a nation, well, the United States, where the people here are mostly desperate. And they're rightly desperate. Because if this goes on like it's going on now, if business is conducted day by day and week by week as it's going now, the United States has no chance whatsoever. We're in a situation which is somewhat comparable to that of Franklin Roosevelt in coming into the presidency, or before coming into the presidency, because he had, from his position as governor of New York State, he had already devised a programmatic approach to the recovery of the United States. We are doing the same thing, in a sense, in his footsteps, using our knowledge of what he had done in his time, and what John Kennedy intended to do had he not been murdered in his time. We're doing the same thing. We represent the feasibility, the conceptual feasibility of the idea on which the rescue of the United States from disaster can be secured. We are the only force inside the United States who has that capability, and it's our job to do it. So let's not think at all in terms of one person at a time. We're a team. We're a national team, a national-based team for a single national purpose, to save this nation by, first of all, Glass-Steagall. Without Glass-Steagall, this nation cannot be saved. Without Glass-Steagall, this nation will go extinct, along with many other nations. Without the further introduction of a national credit system to supersede monetarist systems, we cannot save this nation. Glass-Steagall is just the opening step, which leaves a big hole to be filled. And that big hole, which is the hole big enough to be filled by NAWAPA, is the only way we can get a victory. We can take that hope for the United States into every community inside the United States. We can go through the charts we have of what the projects are. We can point out here and there where the employment is going to come. We can indicate the kind of benefits that we can give them. We can say it can begin tomorrow morning if you vote these candidates in. Go at it that way. Don't be little. Don't be small. I tell Summer, don't be small. Don't be small. I take my advice. You notice that? Okay. Anyway, but that's the point. We're going out really not to make the old college try. We're out to win the war. And winning the war means that we're going to put on the platform not only for the United States but for the world a program which in the United States and beyond means a general economic recovery started in this planet. And the success of this in getting this program through in the United States, or support for what the United States is doing on this account, will bring other nations into similar cooperation with us, because there are many other projects besides NAWAPA. There are projects in Russia, there are projects in China, there are India. Africa has great projects that are needed, urgently needed. So we can put the world on the road to decency. And we can do it with the few people we are, by presenting the concepts of ideas which are uniquely sufficient to lead this nation to its own salvation.
Great.
Have fun.
Well, let me just say, for those of you in the audience who may be joining us for the first time, this is Lyndon LaRouche, and I'm Diane Sayre, candidate on the LaRouche National Slate for Congress in the state of New Jersey. And with us in the studio is Dave Christie from Washington. And connected via Skype, we have Keisha Rogers in Texas, Rachel Brown in Massachusetts, Bill Roberts in Michigan, and Summer Shields in California. So I think we pretty well cover the country, and I think we are very well situated to take up exactly what you've raised. And this is now, I believe it's the 11th week of these discussions that we've been having, where the whole leadership has been pulled closer together, and a number of us have been in quite some fights with party officials and others, and I think this is a phenomenal perspective.
Except the greatest phenomenon is that Keisha is running against the invisible man.
Exactly.
Non-existent candidate.
I know.
It's the best Texas could produce.
That's a sad comment.
Well, she can correct that easily.
Right.
By giving him mercy and letting him go home. Or he can probably get a barn or something to live in.
Well, just on that, I think what you said, what we've laid out as the perspective here for the nation is absolutely optimistic. And just this past week, in Sunday, many people know that the Sunday New York Times had an article about me that was taken from the Texas Tribune. And the two key things that they bring up in terms of policy that I represent are the space mission, the development of a Moon Mars colonization, Glass-Steagall, and NAWAPA. And one of the things that I found interesting is that they said that the reason that my opponent was an improbable candidate is because he grew up in a small town, a small village in India where there was no running water. And I said, well, they should probably look around at the state of Texas and West Texas. We're finding many people without running water here. Many people don't have access to water. So, I mean, it's not the fact that he came from a small town without any running water that makes him an improbable candidate. It's the fact that he's defending Obama and not putting forth these very optimistic national solutions in which we're just discussing here, the need for the North American Water and Power Alliance as the driver for national policy, because right now this is the only thing that's going to unite the nation in a way that something like the Apollo mission under President Kennedy united the nation, a great mission orientation. And this is really what the Democratic Party and others are afraid of. You know, they're afraid of having and terrified of having to defend Obama with no solutions, defend the president who is acting against these very policies that we're bringing up at this time, these very necessary policies for the development of the nation and of the entire planet. You know, the fact that Obama's pushing a policy against science, against these water development projects such as NAWAPA, and they have to go out and defend this. I mean, what are they going to say when they go and knock on people's doors? The people are going to ask, what is your policy for us? What are you going to do for us? And they're going to say, well, we're going to stop Keisha Rogers and we're going to stop these candidates who want to get Obama out. And that people are going to slam the doors in their faces. But I think if we go out with this very perspective of great optimism for the nation, which we've already been doing, and we're seeing an overwhelming response, as all of us, each person on here can report about the responses we're getting in the door-to-door campaigns and, you know, throughout the various areas of the nation, that we are functioning as a unified force around clear alternatives to the direction that the nation is taking at the present time.
I think on the question of this obvious joke candidate, I mean, what's being done there in Texas is they're trying to humiliate the whole campaign. That is, all the candidates in Texas are being humiliated by having a joke candidate run against them. Now, this goes together with what's the policy of the British Empire. The British Empire's policy is the end of the nation state, a one world empire. And this guy's a joke. The attempt is to drag us down into bothering with this guy. He's a nothing. But the point, instead of saying he's a nothing, demonstrate the fact that, make it obvious that he's nothing. Because from the text, for one thing, for example, NAWAPA. NAWAPA is big, but then it brings up the question of NASA. Brings up other things. Why not something that's true, that will work? Why jokes? Don't throw a joke candidate against us. That's tantamount to treason. Throwing joke candidates against serious candidates is a surrogate for treason. It's not worth debating. The man is not real. And that's it. Don't get involved in debating a guy who's not real. And you find, and all these guys, they don't have anything. The United States is ready to crash. We're ready to disintegrate. And you've got bad enough, you've got 4 Republican candidates, of which 3 we're not even sure they're human. And the other one is doubtful. The 4th is doubtful. Then you've got Obama, who is less than human, really, in terms of function. And you want to debate these guys? Or do you want to say, look, this cannot be our future? How do you say that? You have to say, what is our future? Our future lies on using NAWAPA as the driver for national and international change. Why? Because it's well designed. It was designed in original conception as something which was very much needed. It's still needed, more than ever. We are not going to have food for our citizens in many parts of the country without NAWAPA, because we're not going to be able to grow it. We don't have any chance as a people without NAWAPA. Now, there are many other things besides NAWAPA, but NAWAPA is the only thing that's big enough and at the same time feasible enough to save this nation from hell. Don't debate these candidates. Let them debate themselves. Let them say what they've got to build the United States. What's your program, buddy? You've got all this stuff you're talking about. You're going to cut this, you're going to cut that, you're going to starve this guy, you're going to eat this guy. You know, they are nothing. We have to get the picture in focus. There is nothing for the American people being offered by the Democratic Party now, especially from the top down, from the president on down. Nothing being proposed that's any damn good for the American people in the Republican Party right now. There are Republicans, that's individual Republicans, but in terms of a national party campaign, it's nothing. There's just some good Republican individuals and good Democratic individuals running as representatives or being reelected as representatives. That's all we have. So what we have is a program which is the only thing that saved this nation. Glass-Steagall, number one, and going back to the principle of a credit system rather than a monetary system also. Glass-Steagall is the implementation, the realization of the implementation of the U.S. federal Constitution, of Glass-Steagall, and of the credit system. It's the union of these forces and nothing else that will save this nation. Any other issues are irrelevant, because if you don't save the nation first, you're not going to save anything else. And all the other things that don't save the nation are in that degree irrelevant. And with those things done, we can take care of the needs of the people. If we're getting employment restored, production restored, food restored, we've done it all. We have to take charge. And becoming a leader of a nation, a troubled nation in great danger, as we are now, it's those who are capable of going forth and taking charge from the top down and the word go that are qualified to lead the nation.
Yeah, I think, well, putting the perspective right now of this danger of this thermonuclear strike, the confrontation, the British who would use an insane puppet, Barack Obama, to do this. But I made the point at a town hall with Diane that it's not if we stop the war, then we can move forward with these kind of economic development projects and even the international perspective that Arctic development immediately implies, NAWAPA as being the keystone project, but rather it's that directionality, which is the only way mankind can go, is what is causing the British to move forward and to threaten these nations to back down from this kind of development perspective. So it's not a if we stop the war, then we build it. The whole reason the war exists is to shut this kind of perspective down.
If we submit, there will be war.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be extermination war.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be
thermonuclear war. It'll be extermination. We have no choice. We do this, or this nation has, in particular, no choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's useful to just think back historically. The circles around Donovan, for example, or even in World War II, the question of the Bering Straits was on the table for us to arm the Soviets in the fight against the Nazis. You know, Donovan had suggested Arctic development back then. So this is NAWAPA as part of this perspective. It's not anything new. It's part of a continuous process.
It was the same thing involving that Donovan, which led me into the role I played in launching the SDI. It's a continuity of the tradition of the American patriotic tradition, which is what I represent, contrary to those clowns we have to deal with often. And that's what we're doing. We're taking what the root of what the United States has represented from its conception in the 1620s, to the present time. There's an unbroken channel of thinking and development through all this process. And that's what is unique to us in the United States, is the hidden treasure inside the souls of the people of the United States. We're not just coming up from the outside as from Mars with a program for Earth improvement. We're coming up with the very soul of the United States, as represented by its history and by the leaders who represented its history. And we're saying, get out of the way. We're taking charge. We're getting our nation back again. You guys who tried to steal it with your British lies and so forth, we're taking it back. And this nation is going to survive. It's going to win. And we have the program, we have the policy, which can lead to victory. And that's the only way to fight. We have already won in principle. Let's go ahead and collect.
I was going to say, people see that when we go out. I've run into, everybody sees that what we represent as a slate is a real policy. There's absolutely no policy being presented by any of the candidates outside of what we represent, even though we're 6 in number, and it's a national policy. What you're saying on the question of the size of NAWAPA and even the size of the British Empire, when you say that and you assert that that's the case, that this is how big what we're trying to do is, suddenly you don't have any room for, oh, and by the way, I'm also for this, I'm also for that. Because all these other kind of postulates that would come up, they disappear because you're taking it from the top. It already encompasses everything that could possibly come up. And people, they do respond to that. They get very excited by it, maybe a little nervous, but they get excited by it. And I've been told on a number of occasions, thank you for having a real platform, because none of these other people have any sort of real platform. They really just don't. And this guy, D.P. George, is a perfect example. I don't even know if I should mention his name, but this guy running against Keisha, a perfect example. He's a joke.
Yeah. Zero.
Well, the other thing you have in the country, yesterday I spoke to a group of Vietnam veterans. And here are people who, on the one hand, are passionately committed to the nation and also devastated by the way that they've been treated by the nation. But they're impassioned, so that you see that a mission like this, where you have older people who are skilled and younger people who are damaged, who are a mess, you create something where there's an actual direction for society and people can be brought in. We can save them in a certain sense.
Yeah, take the case of Tony Blair.
Do we have to, Lynn?
No, you do have to take it. He's still around, by the way. And he was a key factor in shaping the current president of the United States. Don't forget that little guilt he carries as well. No, what he did, he got us into a new war in Iraq, which is based entirely on an outright fraud and a pack of lies. Huh? How many soldiers, U.S. soldiers, have died in Asia, Eurasia, as a result of this Tony Blair policy, which was used to get the second Iraq war going? What's going on in this whole region? How many soldiers do we have over there dying for nothing? For no good purpose whatsoever. They're defending nothing. They're deliberately under the orders of our president, current president. We're fomenting drug trafficking, which is the greatest source of death in that region.
And they know it.
And of course they know it. Why do you think they become demoralized? First of all, they generally go into it because they're desperate. They're looking for family security of some kind. And they're going to spend their lives abroad in military service being shot at for no real purpose, no real intention. There's no goal in this thing. It's a management thing, like managing wild animals. And our people are rotting and dying over there, being degraded, destroyed morally in every other way. And we're allowing it to go on? It's because Tony Blair, a man who lied, a man who caused the murder of his fellow citizens in order to cover up the lies, was one of the greatest scum on the face of the earth. and the guy who helped create the Obama administration as a side effort of his own. And we sit there, we put up with this crap, and we say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And you say, well, if there's nothing you can do about it, what the hell are you doing in government? What do you think government is for? It's to me just exactly these problems. If you can't stand up to the job, quit, get out. Make room for someone who can do the job. That's the issue. We have in our hands the means with enough agreement, which is possible because people are desperate. They need this agreement. We have enough with other parts of the world as well to restore something. And we've got to do it now. We've got to do it this year. We can't do it next year. We've got to do it this year. And the sooner, the better. The sooner, the safer. And only by our representing a unifying factor which is coming forth from the institutions of selection of government. Only from there, a rebirth of the U.S. government from the crap it's been subjected to. By that kind of inspiration, but you have to have a practical program that actually answers what you're promising. Mm-hmm. What we have is unique is we have the practical program. We have it defined. We're the best experts on this as an organized effort. We're the best experts in the world on this one. We are saying we can save the United States. We can bring it back. We can deal with these problems. It won't be easy, but we can deal with them. Mm-hmm. We can do as Franklin Roosevelt did in a fairly desperate, not as bad, but a desperate situation when he became president. We can do it.
Well, when we were having the initial discussions on what the platform was, and you had in discussions thrown out that Glass-Steagall and the credit system, which of course Glass-Steagall just wipes out the massive speculative financial rot in the system. But once that's done, there's not enough legitimate money or money tied to real physical assets and so on. So therefore, in and of itself, that won't do anything. And so then when it comes to the credit system, people always say, well, what is the credit system? Which is not just simply rules of banking, but it is this commitment to the future. And
take a project, any project. Take a project. Will it work? It's what the founders of the nation did. Huh? Okay, now let's take this. What are we going to be paying in terms of real goods for people to work, for the tools and for the materials they require? Mm-hmm. How rapidly can our people, so employed, improve their own income by their own improvements? Therefore, okay, we call that credit. We give people the credit. We assure them the U.S. government is going to be paid for what they do in materials and labor for this work, on the assumption that we're going to improve the productivity of labor in the process. Therefore, technology and these science driver programs and basic economic infrastructure programs are so essential. So we just take a balance sheet, which is what we did before, what Roosevelt was doing in his own way within the limitations he was operating within. And you say, we don't need your damn money. We have our own money, our own credit. We will pay our own people, and we'll make sure that we're productive enough that we can continue to pay them. And that worked the first time we tried it. It worked even earlier in the Massachusetts Bay Colony while it was still able to function under its own steam. It will work again. It's the distinct principle which distinguishes the Constitution of the United States from the government of every government of the world otherwise. It is tested, it will work. We have to make sure that the ones who get in the way are to move out of the way. And we can do it. We can promise this to people, reasonable promises to people, for tomorrow, for next year and beyond. We can do that. Because there are a lot of people out there who should have work, which it'd be useful work, for which we would be glad to pay if we had the money to pay them with. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we can have progress. We can do that. And we just have to get across, what we have to get across most of all to people is this concept of a credit system. to free them from the slavery to the idea of a monetarist system. The monetarist system is something, an evil, Satan, comes to the earth. And he says, I got the money. I got all the money in the universe. You want an income? Come to me. I've got the money. I control the money. Who are you? Well, I'm the British Empire. Or I was the Roman Empire. I used to be the Byzantine Empire. I used to be the old slavery system before. Well, why do we have to give you that money? It is not worth anything. You're only stealing from us. You're making us slaves. You're making us ignorant. You're making us stupid. That's not good. We don't need you. We do not need you, is what our founders of our nation said. And that's what we have to get across to these American people, because they still believe that we need that money. Hey, mother, we need that money. We can't live without that money. Don't you see? We got to take that money. Don't you see? There's nothing else for us. Don't you see? Well, you come along to them and you say, wait a minute, buddy, do you realize this is all a swindle? That none of that is true? You don't need that money? Why don't I need that money? Because we can give you credit for work you do, for things you invent, for services you perform. Because what you will do will be useful for the nation. And it will be a bigger reward for all of us than it was for taking it. That's the way the American system worked. Look what Lincoln did. What Lincoln did due to skunks like Andrew Jackson. Now, that was a real skunk president for you. He had the biggest swindlers in the United States were British agents, and they owned him. And they shut down the Second Bank of the United States. They looted it. And the day that Andy Jackson left office, the whole U.S. bank financial system went kafooey as a result of Andrew Jackson's thievery and skullduggery and scumduggery as well. And so what Lincoln faced when he went into the presidency was the Confederacy had taken over almost everything with British backing. Slavery was the basic economy of the United States, by and large, except for a few colonies. Lincoln changed all that. He said, to hell with you and your financial system. We have we don't need a monetary system. We have a credit system. And on the basis of creating a credit system from scratch, Lincoln organized what became the mightiest nation on this planet in terms of its capability of employment. We took people from all over the world. We created entire farm belts out of people who were immigrants from various parts of the world during his term. We built a process. The first transcontinental railway system was a result of his initiative. The greatest industrial development, the greatest scientific development in the United States history was done under those means. These are methods which work. And we just have to make clear to people to understand how these methods work and why all this stuff, this Wall Street philosophy, this British philosophy, is a bunch of junk we want to just get rid of. And what are we going to do? We're going to be ruthless. I'll tell you one thing I will be ruthless about and encourage all people who believe me and hear me to do. Wipe out that worthless debt which has been hung on the Federal Reserve System. Just wipe it out. How? Very simply. Don't do any damage to it. Just neglect it. You don't have to touch it. You only have to neglect it. And it will go away of its own accord.
I was just going to bring up, Lynn, that it's true that it's really beautiful that NAWAPA is, in a sense, the only national project that's out there. I mean, we've had different rail projects and whatnot, and there's never funding for them, and there never will be within the current system. And they're also not national. That we've really lost the optimism for a long time to have a national project, something that's exciting and is for humanity in general, not for the profit of somebody. So it's really exciting in that standpoint. And then also just the fact that Roosevelt even didn't really have a full national project. You know, he did it with the Four Corners projects, but NAWAPA, in and of itself, is a project like that. So that's exciting.
Well, I think one of the things about NAWAPA also is that here you've had this process of about 3 generations of the British Empire basically trying to turn Americans into something other than being really Americans, which, in different, I think in different regions you get different expressions of it. I think here in particular in Detroit, probably in Seattle, it's the case that because you have this strategic wartime retooling, even though at this point there's some people alive who are part of that, in a lot of people's cases, it's part of their family history, that there was, part of what it meant to come to this area, be part of that mobilization, was that you were actually part of the strategic defense of humanity. And that, it seems to be a very kind of a latent, albeit, but it's present. It is part of the identity of Americans that the individual can actually be part of an identity that goes very much into the future and very much extends to all of humanity. And NAWAPA has that characteristic. I mean, yeah, it's the only thing. We can use it to basically destroy anyone who doesn't have an efficient commitment as a candidate to fighting so that people can actually have work and the country isn't destroyed right now. But it also is a strategic defense of mankind, because without it, we are condemned to.
Let's do something right now, concretely, to get this thing going. Now let's take, each of you got areas you're involved in, economic areas you're involved in, largely infrastructure and other things. All you have to do is take the map of NAWAPA. You've got the full map of NAWAPA. Now locate, pinpoint the points on the map in which each state and each part of a state where work is required, employment and work is required to get this thing going. Mm-hmm. Let's take that and identify that in every area of the United States, in every constituency area, about what this program would mean for them, what the specific jobs are, where they would be, what it would take to get this thing going in each area. And let's just do it. Let's go out there. Instead of, we don't have the money, but we have the brains. We can put together with the NAWAPA program, the way it's defined, we can elaborate with calling into play people who are sometimes retired but still skilled in each area, each aspect of this production that's required for NAWAPA, and indicate this area for these jobs. Now you have the primary jobs of the areas of the NAWAPA as such. Then you have to be done what has to be done to provide the platform for there. That, for example, like the old story of what do you do in the area of Detroit? Well, Detroit used to be, we used to think of Detroit as being regrouped, apart from these thieves that took over the place, like back in the 1950s. I was there. I know what was happened. All right, so you have to rebuild what we call the basic economic infrastructure in the nation. Now, some areas used to have the auto industry. Now, the auto industry was not the auto industry. It was the everything industry. Every part of the nation was involved in this one industry, which is this complex we used to call the auto industry. We used to make airplanes, make bombers, made all kinds of things in these factories, in these places. So you can go into every country, every part of the world. You take the primary product and the primary services required to make things function, and you can find in each area a specific amount of work, kind of work, which that NAWAPA program calls for. It can be identified. And those are specifically the jobs which a national credit system with a fixed exchange rate system and with the cleaning up of Glass-Steagall, you can pinpoint essentially what the exact amount of potential employment at what rates is there for our citizens. To me, that is the real war chest for this campaign. It's the war chest for the United States. It's the hidden reserves, the hidden potential, which is waiting there for the hands of the people of the United States to seize it and do it.
Yep. It's the only thing of duration and scope that could possibly work right now. Some people, we get into discussions with some of the union crowd, and they say, well, can't we just kind of, fix the roads up and change the light bulbs like Obama's stimulus program or something? But the mass of credit that is needed to get things functional in terms of it has to be this big. There's just no other.
Well, we can make it real too, because it is real. It is real.
Right, and I think the important thing is also the cultural transformation that this brings about. That it's not just about make work or giving people employment, but this is a whole identity shift in the nation. And this is something that we've really been hitting at with NAWAPA as a total cultural transformation. And you look at, we've been talking about in the course of these discussions, the degeneration of the nation that's happened since the assassination of President Kennedy and his brother, and what this has done to the various generations in the downward trend in economic policies and cultural policies. But what this would do to turn this around, I mean, we were talking, as you were just saying, you look at these young men and women being put out on the battlefield to be shot and killed in military action without any sense of mission, without any sense of meaning to their lives. And we're talking about something here that's going to restore meaning to the lives of the American people. And this is what President Kennedy represented. This is what President Roosevelt and the Civilian Conservation Corps. We took the young people off the streets, out of the ghettos, out of the scrap heaps, and gave them a sense of a mission with the things like the Civilian Conservation Corps. And right now, the young people don't have the skills necessary to build these types of projects, but we have to mobilize and recruit that base in the skilled labor of the generations before to want to actually take under their wing this younger generation of people who, they want a mission. And I can tell you, this has to be the alternative to what we're seeing right now with these insane, this destructive culture, these video game culture, this new movie that they have out now called The Hunger Games, teaching young teenagers how to kill each other to survive. All of these things is a total capitulation and representation of everything that the empire wants to do, the British Empire wants to do to destroy the creative potential and the progress and development of mankind. But what we're proposing here is not just a great project, it is a total need for a cultural renaissance to emerge at a moment of great turmoil and crisis for mankind.
Yeah, I think along the lines of the regions and the development of these different, how the project's going to manifest itself in our different regions. Less than a week ago, the National Ignition Facility at Lawrence Livermore National Labs, these guys, and this gets right to the point, I think, of what you're bringing up here, Keisha, of how we're going to employ people. What are we going to do with people? They fired the most powerful laser beam in all of human history. And apparently, in under a second, you had more energy produced than the whole grid of the United States, electrical grid. And this is a breakthrough, and I'm amazed by a breakthrough of this magnitude, despite the fact that you had a total offensive of genocide policy and destruction of the United States coming from the British Empire. You still have crucial breakthroughs that can be made. And you can imagine how incredible of a shift in these breakthroughs you would get with a program like NAWAPA, where you have a governing principle that the more amount of breakthroughs you're going to get, the better off we are. And once upon a time, there used to be a discussion here in San Francisco about turning the San Francisco port into a deep water port. And these are things that are going to come up again, because how else are we going to invite Vladimir Putin of Russia to come in on a gigantic ship bearing some important goods from Russia in the coming couple of years? We're going to need a deep water port for that. And Hu Jintao, whoever is the leader at the time of China, we'll invite them in and have a grand old time. But the fact that you have the breakthroughs that are potentially there waiting, despite all the horror, is quite an amazing thought, and it gives me a sense of this idea of the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice.
That's right. I also was thinking, we had discussed this at one point, but it's going to give Americans a sense of the nation as a whole, because this thing you're bringing up, Keisha, I think this movie or these games are based on an assumption that the United States has disintegrated. It's broken into factions, like the old Confederacy. It's the old British game. Everyone's going against each other. And when you look at the country, like the speeches that Kennedy made at these dams, and he was always talking about that some places like New Jersey, I'm thinking of, we still are suffering from the floods from Hurricane Irene. We still have too much water. And down in Texas, you had all these droughts and you have too little water. And one of the most obvious things is this question of water management and regulation. This is not a secret mystery. But when people begin to think about it, they say, yeah, why is it that we should be suffering from too much water and someone else is suffering from too little water? Why don't we put this thing together so that what you see is not only millions of jobs for the people particularly affected, but an actual higher order platform for the entire nation as a whole, as a unit?
Mm-hmm. Actually, there was just a report coming out from U.S. intelligence agency that I can't remember. I just sort of saw it, scanned it, but warning that water would be the coming grounds of new wars, etc. Of course, they're assuming that we'll make it that far to even do that, but it's I think a very key point on the future of just how we need water.
So we basically have to organize among us, etc. We have to organize an agenda of, shall we say, the project. We have the project on one side. We have what's been done by Michael, which and can be extended on that. So that's one aspect. Now we've got to fit. We also have, to a large degree, from his map, we have much of the location of where the work actually will be done. Then you have another area of where the work will be done to support. In other words, you have a fixed structure which is determined by nature and by the way you build this project. Then you have the auxiliary where you are supporting this project's specifics. The two elements combine to give you a general program. And you can assign these things to areas by states. And we can use the organization of the state-by-state organization as the existing mechanism of coordination through the federal government as a whole, for the project as a whole, and to international cooperation, which is also involved here. Because we're also talking about Mexico, we're talking about Canada, we're talking about the getting across the Bering Straits and similar kinds of things. We're also talking about a general integration of the North and South America, which is a natural extension of this process and a required one. And we have then the whole similar relationship to Asia. Asia is a different territory, has different problems, different options, different challenges. But we can actually, by using the institutions of representative government on a national basis and regional basis, we can use that structure, that existing structure, which people are already accustomed to, and use that as the instrument for organization of these projects through the federal government, because it's going to be federal credit in both the United States and other countries, which is going to be the backbone of this project. And we're going to have a system of fixed exchange rate credit system among nations means that we can organize the entire planet on this basis without touching or dissolving any of the national sovereignties which are in question. Well, the British are leading to a post-sovereignty world. A single world empire is what the British scheme is. That's what the fighting is all about right now. And to regulate the human population to less than 1 billion in the process of reassorting where people are allowed to live and who will be allowed to live and when and why and how. We must destroy that. We must destroy the British Empire's new project. Destroy it utterly. Look what the murder that's been done to Africa, the genocide done to the continent of Africa by the British Empire is beyond all belief. And it's still going on. We must end that and return to the system of sovereign nation states, but sovereign nation states which cooperate on the basis of fixed exchange rates, on common interest in projects, in specific goals of each nation, and trying to bring them into accommodation with each other. And we have to get out there in space now. We have to actually provide protection against big rocks which might hit Earth and eliminate the whole human question altogether. We must do these things. We have new dangers to us, to human species in the solar system and beyond. We have to learn how to deal with these things and understand them. So we do need the cooperation, the voluntary cooperation of the minds of citizens and individual respective states. We need that cooperation, that sense of participation, because it is participation in the improvement of the universe, which is the only thing that really defines human interest. Human interest is that you don't die, you will die, but you don't die because you project something from your living into the future. And if you're not participating in the future, you are not alive. You're just somebody getting ready to die. And that's where the philosophy says today. People no longer believe that they live to a purpose beyond their life. They believe that you die and you have a religious ceremony over the thing, and that's it. Where you're buried no longer means much anymore. Where you were, what you did, doesn't mean anything. And that's not satisfactory for human beings. They become like beasts when you do that to them. It's what the young people in our country are becoming, like beasts, which is what this Obama administration above all epitomizes. The transformation of human beings from human into beasts. And that's what we're talking about, what's happening to the generation under 14 years of age. So this question of human mission, intent, mission, what does it mean to live? Why should you bother living? What do you want to live for? Why not commit suicide? You get tired of it? Take the exit. And then the whole meaning of humanity vanishes. And that's what these bums are trying to take away from us.
Well, I think you have given us an excellent challenge. And hopefully we'll be back here next week and we'll have a lot to report on having accomplished.
As long as our dear missing friend recovers from what we've done today.
Yes. I think he will.
Okay, good.
Okay. Thanks.
This is Michael Kirsch. LaRouche PAC is right now raising the funds to produce this special report, flood the country with it, and start the national platform discussion, which Lyndon LaRouche just outlined. Go to the contribution page and contribute the maximum amount you can today.